Today we may laugh, we may shed a tear, but most certainly we will all celebrate the culture of joy and commitment, which is an integral part of the Perkiomen fabric. Faculty and staff members at Perkiomen do far more than what's outlined in their job descriptions. They'll help you find a great book to read, they'll encourage you to be a leader, they'll push you to achieve your potential in the classroom, they'll stay after practice to help you with your shot, fix your baseball glove, or maybe even bake you cookies. The adults in this community live a life of service. They bring personal meaning to our motto, Solvitur Vivendum. Everyone at Perkiomen shares the depth of their lives with each of us, and from that range of experiences, we all learn and grow. Although our focus as a school is to educate students, we as a community know that everyone is always learning, both students and teachers alike. One of my childhood heroes, one of the greatest soccer players of all time, Pelé, said, "Success is no accident. It comes through hard work, perseverance, learning, studying, sacrifice, and most of all, love of what you're doing and learning to do." We are fortunate to have a team of faculty and staff who love what they do and serve to provide the best experiences for our students and our school community. Thank you to Ms. Goupel, Ms. Hammond, Ms. Seeger, Ms. Sweeney, and Mr. Doherty for your loyal, tried, and true support of Perkiomen School. Thank you.
Our first honoree today is Ms. Amber Goupel. Ms. Goupel, please come take a seat on center stage. I would like to welcome Ms. Longstreth and Tiger to share a few words about Ms. Goupel.
Ms. Longstreth and I are honored to speak about Ms. Goupel today. We open with a quote from Robert A. Heinlein.
A human being should be able to change a diaper,
Plan an invasion,
butcher a hog,
con a ship,
design a building,
ride a sonnet,
balance accounts,
build a wall,
set a bone,
comfort the diet,
take orders,
give orders,
cooperate,
act alone,
solve equations,
analyze new problem,
pitch manure,
program computer,
cook a tasty meal,
fight efficiently.
die gallantly.
Specialization is for insects.
Round of applause for a woman of many talents. Amber Goupel is one of the most quietly talented, versatile people on our campus. She began her career here as art teacher and, believe it or not, Coach B, a middle school boys basketball coach. She coached Miles. However, Ms. Goupel quickly moved on to chair of the Fine Arts Department, head of middle school, and now director of student programs. Most people work their way into these titles over decades, not a decade. As a colleague, Ms. Goupel is hard to get to know, but easy to respect. She's busy serving the students. As I got to know her as a teacher, artist, social justice activist, and colleague, I realized there was inside this woman something that I needed as a friend. When I was in the hospital in 2016, every day for 10 weeks, I would think of her from 7:20 to 7:40. We used to have morning meetings and chats together in the middle school every day. I hoped she was missing me too. Ms. Goupel can bring out warmth in shy, quiet, scared, or even outspoken and awkward students, and turn them into confident young people. Think of Abdel Ibrahim, Anthony Perdue, Megan Sweeting, Brianna Williams-Massey, and Tiger, standing right here beside me. Her advisees are fiercely loyal. One day in TLC this year, I asked Tiger if he knew how he became Miss Goopel's advisee, and he didn't. Little did he know I would tell him the story in public. One day, Tiger here was walking out of Robbie's, meek little awkward freshman that he was, holding 5 candy bars, 9 a.m., 5 candy bars. And Miss Goopel walked by and said, "What are you doing? Did you eat breakfast?" Tiger mumbled something about not eating breakfast and walked off with his candy bars. Miss Goopel knows when to step in, and Tiger was her advisee from that summer on.
So, I want to talk to you about Miss Goopel's role in my life. I struggled with my grades for quite some time, and as many of you here probably know, my memory isn't for the best. So Miss Goopel came up with a plan to help me. She asked me to send her what homework I had every night at 8 to make sure I was not forgetting to do it. Needless to say, I wasn't super consistent, but it certainly helped. It was Miss Goopel who dragged me to TLC, who helped me make plans, something completely foreign to me, and who constantly reached out to my mom despite the fact that neither of them really spoke each other's language. She was the hero I needed, but not the hero I deserved. The thing with Miss Goopel is that she cares, and she spends a crazy amount of time and effort to make sure Perk kids are enjoying the Perk experience. I will never forget this one advisory lunch, when we wanted to try something new and picked Indian food. Well, it turned out most people weren't really used to eating something they've never had before. So, starting is never an option with Miss Goopel. She promptly drove to the nearest McDonald's and got us some chicken nuggets. I could speak a lot more after spending those 3 whole years with this amazing person. They'll probably go over the time limit, so I'll stop here.
Now, a few fun facts.
Mr. Yorgi and Miss Goopel met through a friend at a party and started dating on Friday the 13th.
It gets better. 9 years later to the day, they married in secret. No one knew that they were married until 6 months later when Mr. Yorgi got a job offer from Perkiomen. They quickly told their parents and moved on campus.
Miss Goopel is a born maker of things. She is currently learning how to weld so she can make bigger, heavier things.
All of our higher education is in art history, and Miss Goopel spent years trying to convince her family that she is a historian and not an artist. Then she took a job as an art teacher, and that made sense to her family.
Miss Goopel skipped her senior year of high school to go to college early.
Miss Goopel has a genetic abnormality that webs her second and third toes together on both feet and has resisted offers to separate them in various and creative ways.
Finally, we will close with a quote from Abdel Ibrahim, class of 2014, from his baccalaureate speech. He expresses perfectly how Miss Goopel takes students under her wing.
Miss Goopel, you have been my mentor for 4 years. No words can express how much I have valued my time with you, as well as with your wonderful family. You are brilliantly driven and artistically gifted, and because of that, you touch the lives of people you interact with here. You have made a permanent mark on my life, and you will forever have a place in my heart as the woman who helped me paint the sky. Thank you, Amber, for 10 years of talent, dedication, inspiration, and friendship.
next honoree is Miss Hammond. Miss Hammond, this chair is waiting for you. And Sherry and Mrs. Longstreth will join us to honor Miss Hammond.
Don't go into the library.
The library is dangerous. Don't go in if you do.
You know what will happen. It's like a pet store or a bakery.
Every single time you'll come out of there holding something in your arms.
Those novels with their big eyes and those no-nonsense, all muscle,
Greyhounds and Dobermans, all nonfiction and business.
cuddly when they're young, but then when the first page is turned,
The donut scent of it all. Knowledge, the aroma of coffee being made.
in all those books, something for everyone, the deli offerings of civilization itself.
The library is a book of books. It's concrete and wood and glass covers.
Keeping within them the very big, very long story of everything.
The library is dangerous, full of answers if you go inside.
You may not come out the same person who went in. This is exactly what happened to Sherry.
When I first met Miss Hammond, it was during an advisory meeting. It was a combined advisory meeting, and I wondered, what an interesting teacher. She was so energetic and giddy and just give people positive vibes. I mean, there were donuts, so maybe that's part of her reason too. But still, Miss Hammond gave me a strong first impression. When my schedule was changed later in the year, I had a study hall with Miss Hammond as the supervisor of it. Most of the time, instead of actually doing work, I would talk to her about everything. Books, knitting, weekends, stuff. When I started knitting, I would always bring it to study hall to work on it, and I would always ask her questions about knitting every 5 seconds. When I finished the scarf I was working on it was 3 feet long, and I was so proud of myself. From casting on to biting off, she was there. Questions from, why is my knitting curling on the sides, to, I think I dropped 10 stitches, how am I supposed to fix it? When the new school year started, I had Miss Hammond as my advisor. Even when she was reading the announcement, I never stopped moving my hands in my knitting because I knew she knew that I am still listening. Whenever she brings donuts in, which I gotta say is pretty rare, all I do is look up and grab her favorite donut like starving animals. I need to make a point. Donuts at 8 in the morning is awesome. When I started the 100 book challenge in March this year, Ms. Hammer really helped me with my choice of books. She gave me many suggestions of books and helped me find them in the library. Whenever I finish a book, she is the first person I want to talk to about the book and what I learned. Ms. Hammond, I know what I'm going to say next is cheesy, but hear me out. For the past 2 years, you have helped me so much, knitting my first stockinette scarf to my winter history project. This has been a great journey for both of us, and I hope you will continue it.
Now that Sherry's made us a little sentimental about Miss Hammond, we'll roast her a little bit with some fun facts provided by Mr. Moser.
Miss Hammond falls asleep during Star Wars and Marvel movies.
Miss Hammond is rather superstitious. During the last solar eclipse, she left a jar of water outside to absorb its rays. The jar of eclipse water is in her kitchen to be added to drinks as needed for a boost.
Miss Hammond is a big fan of Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
Miss Hammond always has at least 2 books going, usually more. She listens to an audiobook while getting for bed every night as part of her routine, and then has at least 1 physical book next to her bed.
Miss Hammond is a beach person. She loves vacationing at the beach with family.
Mr. Moser and Miss Hammond met at St. Mary's College when they were freshmen, both 18 years old. Hey, you 18-year-olds, look around. It was October 1997, and they had the same psychology class. They met before a midterm study session.
And Mr. Moser kept trying to find excuses to get together beyond class. They started dating March 1998, both still 18, and have been together ever since.
We're done roasting you. I asked my daughter, Emma, to write a piece about Miss Hammond, as she, like her father, loves to tell stories. So here goes. From Miss L, not Mrs. L. Dear Perkiomen community. I think she got that from you, John. Katie Hammond came to Perk when I was in 7th grade. I don't remember our first meeting, but over the course of the year, as I kept sliding books over the desk in Carnegie so she could check them out, she started sliding others back at me. By high school, I would come in to the quiet sanctuary of the library, and we would talk about the books we had both read, sharing the excitement, even if I was reading it for the second or third time. During breaks from college, I would visit Carnegie, and I would pick up my old favorites to give myself a break from the dense texts of college English courses. This winter, a decade after I first met Miss Hammond, I entered the library once again, this time without a Perk polo or khakis, but as her co-worker. We agreed that as part of my time working at Perk this winter, I would spend a period or two a day helping out in the library. Getting to know Miss Hammond as a friend and mentor was one of the highlights of my winter. The library is so multifaceted, and I got to see how it had changed over the past decade. The collections had come to life. My old favorites were still there, of course, but there was so much more current fiction that I often ended up spending my free hours in the library as well. I realized early on that what makes our collection so special and diverse is the careful research that Miss Hammond puts into finding new and interesting material and keeping displays cohesive and inviting. She loves this library, and her primary goal is for the members of the community to keep reading. Simply being in the library with her, no matter what I happen to be working on that day, made me feel comforted and engaged in the occasional dreariness that comes with winter. Whether it was playing with Ollie and Phoebe during their 2-hour delay, doing inventory or writing book reviews, I looked forward to her unflappable sense of calm and her enthusiasm for sharing books. I thought a lot about the importance of libraries this winter. Truly, they are all about sharing. Through libraries, people share not only books, but experiences, online sources, and information. Miss Hammond not only works all day to make this possible, but she also connects with students on an individual basis and keeps somewhat of an internal catalog in her memory of books to recommend based on what you love. I have personally benefited from her keen sense of what to suggest for a whole decade, and I cannot even begin to put a number to how many books she has led me to. To celebrate Miss Hammond's 10 years of dedication and work, I can think of no better tribute than to read a book, any book you find interesting, from Perk's library or anywhere else. Then take the time, stop by the library, and chat to her about it. Tell her what you learned or how you felt, or simply ask her what to read next. Share what you experienced with her. Miss Hammond, for all that you have done for me, happy reading, Emma Longstreth. Thank you, Katie, and congratulations.
Our final tenure nominee is Ms. Seeger. Ms. Seeger, please join us on stage. I would like to welcome Mr. Doherty and Abby Glavin to speak about Ms. Seeger.
On a daily basis, you'll find Ms. Seeger teaching students math, advising them in their high school careers, and supporting them on the athletic field. Not only does she teach important lessons to her students in these areas, Ms. Seeger also has an underlying goal, and that is she wants her students to be good humans. On the field, the soccer team often hears Ms. Seeger say, "Come on, ladies, help manage this water. We have to be good humans. Ladies, we take care of our field. Be good humans. Don't argue with the refs. We are good humans." In addition to being a coach on the field, she's also a coach in the classroom. And although I've never had Ms. Seeger as a teacher for a course, as my advisor, she's been heavily involved in my academic career. She pushes me to never settle. In other words, risk becoming my best. To encourage me, she uses her "Come on, kid" pep talk. Over the years, I've learned that "Come on, kid" has multiple different definitions. For example, championship soccer game, halftime, Barrack is up 1-0. As Seeger warms me up in goal, she says, "Come on, kid, you got this. If I didn't think you could do it, you wouldn't be out here." This kind of "Come on, kid" pep talk makes me feel like I'm the only one for the job and that I really can do it. However, on the flip side, I've also been on the other end of a very different kind of "Come on, kid" pep talk. Around midterm time, it occasionally sounds something like this: "Come on, kid, what happened in bio?" And after I shrug my shoulders, it is also often followed by, "Well, are you going to see Miss Irvin at conference?" This kind of "Come on, kid" is always the push I need in order to make sure I get my act together. In her 10 years at Perkiomen, Ms. Seeger has had many important jobs here on campus. She's an invaluable member of the math department. She led our student senate for many years, but most importantly, she established PerkG's sports program to highlight the importance of female athletics at Perkiomen. Through this program, she leads the way in showing us how to be strong, independent women. Ms. Seeger launched the #SheIsPerk campaign to highlight and celebrate the accomplishments of Perkiomen's female athletes on social media. But today, I'd like us all to acknowledge that she is Perk as well. Ms. Seeger, whether it's through your good human life lessons, your "Come on, kid" motivation, or by living the #SheIsPerk philosophy, for the past 10 years, you've been one of the best humans that Perk has ever known.
If you know anything about Miss Seeger, you know that she is loving this moment. Being the center of attention is all she lives for. So I'm going to try and draw this out. Give you the spotlight. I'm here for you. She said something to me when we sat down. She said, 10 years, that's nothing. You have 30. And I was like, well, maybe. I said, but let's think about what you've done in 10 years. Developed a very, very strong soccer program, the G Sports, and the calculus, which I'm going to come back to. But more importantly, she got married and has a baby. And I think that's pretty big on a personal level. And very happy to have another little baby on campus that makes most of us very, very happy. She does love her Uncle Pete a lot. But I do kind of want to talk professionally. I mean, 10 years ago, a wide-eyed young woman came to work here at this school and was going to teach BC Calculus. And we had BC Calculus prior to that, but never the numbers that we have now and have had, nor the level of success that we have had. I'm going to be real honest. I've said this many times to many people. I think she is one of, if not the best teachers we have at this school. And what makes it is that she can teach. Let me try to explain that. Everyone who's been to college has had this experience. You have a professor that is incredibly brilliant, but can't teach. Okay, they might be world known for their research in that field, but they can't teach. She can teach. Okay, how is that proved? Well, let's just take a look at the AP scores that she produces every year, year in, year out. Okay, she also has motivated so many students to go on, pursue fields in engineering, mathematics, science. Okay, they have the strong background. This is not an easy thing to do with BC calculus. I'm forever impressed by her abilities, her passion, and I laugh because she doesn't like public speaking. Walk by her classroom sometime when she's teaching and see her interact with the kids. And that's why I don't understand how she isn't more comfortable in front of a group. But she says she's not. But I did make a promise to her. And I mean, you guys know how I feel about this place. I've been here a long time. The best thing that could happen to this school is if she stays as long as I have her on. And I made a promise to her. So in 20 years, when she's up here getting recognized for 30, I'll fly back up from Florida, take a few days off. Okay? And I'll say a few words. And you've got my word on it. So congratulations.
Each of our 10-year nominees will receive a Perkiomen Captain's Chair with their name engraved on the chair. Miss Sweeney, will you join us on stage to celebrate your 20 years at Perkiomen? I would like to welcome Ms. Hammond and Ms. Henderson to the stage to talk about Ms. Sweeney.
Good morning. It is my great pleasure to speak today on behalf of Kathy Sweeney. I suppose it goes without saying that as an English teacher, I'm somewhat predisposed to admire and respect librarians. Yet, as I thought about how to frame my talk this morning, I knew that with Kathy, she is so much more than a librarian. I quickly thought of the Greek ideals of civic duty and being a citizen of a community. The Greeks very much believed that as a citizen, we want to strive to make things better, to contribute in a meaningful way for the greater good. And I found this quote by the great statesman Pericles, which I think fits Kathy. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. Kathy Sweeney works tirelessly to make her communities better places. For our community, she robustly participates in any task she is given. When I gathered information for this service, many teachers remarked how she took any research assignment seriously and devoted time and attention to providing teachers with helpful resources for whatever unit they were working on. Being a prolific reader herself, she has a knowledge on such a wide array of topics that she can provide help and guidance to students and teachers on the fly. But also, when asked, she can dive deep and uncover those golden nuggets of information that can transform a unit. She assists every grading period, editing comments. She facilitated tremendously with the school's accreditation self-study, and on and on. On a more personal note, she was such a helpful support for me when I first came to Perkiomen. She was a tour guide for this area, taking me to the still stacks in Bethlehem, showing me the Moravian Academy where Mr. Debbie's father was a headmaster and where there's a building in his name, taking me to the oldest operating bookstore in the United States and on to other notable sites. And when my daughter had a crisis and her vision was compromised and I had to drop everything and take her to the emergency room, Kathy took over my classes, and she was so supportive and kind to me during that hard time. I will always remember it. So although I have not known Kathy as long as Kate has, who will speak after me, I was eager to share how Kathy is a living example of those classical ideals of civic duty, and her efforts help make Perk a better place. We're lucky to have such a conscientious community member. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to have this opportunity to congratulate Kathy Sweeney on 20 years at Perkiomen. You all know her as the person who helps you in the Nallo Center and who keeps Carnegie Library open and running for you on the weekends. You may know her as the person who organizes, advises, coaches, cajoles, encourages, and feeds the middle school reading Olympics team every year, and who's always ready to share a book recommendation for whatever your needs or reading tastes may be. But I would guess that there are many things you don't realize about Ms. Sweeney and the ways she brings her vast interests and expertise to serve our library patrons, meaning all of you. You'll have a hard time meeting someone as up on current events as Ms. Sweeney. She seems to know everything that is going on in news and politics, whether around the corner, in Washington, D.C., or the other side of the world. This makes her an engaged, well-rounded, and well-informed person in general, but in what we call library land, that means that she can offer angles and sources to your inquiries that you might never have thought to investigate. She helps develop many of the resource guides you depend on for projects with knowledge and consideration. Ms. Sweeney is a passionate patron of the arts and culture. While I've never known her to miss a Perkiomen performance, I have known her to travel across the Atlantic Ocean to see a play, or stand out or wait outside for hours for Broadway tickets. Did you know that Ms. Sweeney maintains a blog about local arts-related goings-on? And she's also the co-founder and organizer of Make Music Upper Perk, which is an annual free music festival that takes the Upper Perkiomen Valley by storm every June 21st. You should check it out. You know some other good ones. When it comes to devouring the written word, Ms. Sweeney is not only a consumer of news, politics, and current events, but also of all kinds of books. If you have never taken advantage of her reader's advisory expertise, I highly recommend that you do. Often when we have a delivery of new books come into the library, which by the way happens at least once a week, Ms. Sweeney will process the new items. That means she turns the books into library books. She will check out a heavy tome to herself, bring it home for the evening, and then come back the next morning and say cheerfully, "This was good." It's astounding to me how she does it. Ms. Sweeney reads widely, but her main literary love is science fiction. So just keep that in mind for the next time you need to talk about the new Dr. Cooper Star Trek series. Ms. Sweeney does not miss the annual Book Expo in New York City, and while she's there, she always makes time to collect advanced reader copies and attend panels on hot new books that are coming out for you. As do I. Ms. Sweeney just wants you to read what you love and love what you read. There's one more thing I feel I need to point out about Ms. Sweeney, one important skill that maybe she would prefer I kept quiet about, but that's too bad. She is a baker, and I myself seriously lack that skill, but the cookies, that's all I have to say. She is a cookie baker. And I would just like to say heartfelt thanks to Kathy Sweeney for the past 10 years and her camaraderie and friendship and assistance, and for helping us to take care of our patrons together. Thank you, guys.
the most senior members of the staff, Mr. Doherty. You already have your rocker, but you can come rest on stage in this rocker. Mr. Longstreth, Zach, Garrett, and Laurel, please join us to honor Mr. Doherty.
You don't have to worry about that, Coach. For 30 years, Pete Doherty has poured his heart and soul into Perkiomen. Perkiomen's motto is Solvitur Vivento, is learned by living, and Mr. Doherty is a great example of how to do that. Mr. Doherty is a Renaissance man, someone with a wide range of interests who pursues them with passion. Whether it is restoring cars, woodworking, lawn care, or learning how to make pizza on his grill, he enjoys a worthy project. As an example of risking becoming your best, Mr. Doherty picked up a lacrosse stick in college for the first time. He did not let his lack of experience stop him. He embraced the new challenge, put in the time to gain the knowledge and skills necessary for success, and helped Hartford make the transition to Division I. At Perkiomen, Mr. Doherty continues to display versatility and commitment. Following the theme of adding new sports, the man coached field hockey for the first game here. He, in the spring, has coached baseball, lacrosse, and golf, patiently helping his players realize their potential in all three. In the classroom, Mr. Doherty takes pride in preparing his students for the kind of thinking necessary to do in the short term and the long term. Central to what makes Mr. Doherty special is his ability to communicate. The man can talk with anybody. Sports banquet speeches are a specialty, as he puts on a fun show and you learn about the team. He has the comic timing down, but he also sees and appreciates what his players do. In general, Mr. Doherty puts ideas in terms that people can understand. For examples of certain economic principles, he uses the model of a pizza shop. We get it. We can smell the pizza. Most of all, Mr. Doherty cares. Mr. Williams told me a story about his graduation from Perkiomen a few years back. He said that as he shook hands with all the faculty, he was holding it together until he saw Mr. Doherty, his advisor. Then the emotions came out. Long after you graduate, Mr. Doherty is still there for you as he keeps up with all the alumni out there all over the world. On a more personal note, Mr. Doherty has helped me a great deal. Since the Doherty's kids, Jake and Maggie, are a little older than mine, he passed on tips for what to expect as our kids advance in age. If my tie is messed up, I'll hear it from them loud and clear. Stretch, what are you, some kind of rookie? Preparing for Mrs. Longstreth to come home from the hospital, Mr. and Mrs. Doherty were at that house laying out plans for her return. Mr. Doherty saw what needed to be done, and he wanted to help because he is a great friend. Thank you, Coach. And after many years of teaching about it, and a couple of making it, this one's for you.
We'll try to make this quick for you, Mr. Doherty.
Yeah, class start.
There we go. That's
See what I gotta deal with?
Wow, 30 years is a long time in one place. A really long time. That's longer than a good amount of Perk teachers have even been alive. Seriously though, think about all the things that Mr. Doherty has had to put up with over the years. One thing that I can think of in my short amount of time here at Perk is when I was making Zach, or Little Mule as some of us know him as, laugh for about 10 minutes until Mr. Doherty couldn't take any more of it, and put a prompt end to it just by saying a few words in a stern voice that everyone who has known him for a while has come to know. Another thing that I can think of is when Big Zach takes too much time to get out of the van, and Coach says, "Zach, get out of the van." This particular thing happens quite often in the fall. I would say Coach does have one particular thing that he thoroughly enjoys in the golf season, and that would be Wawa runs after matches. Us golf guys seriously love Wawa. We even have a team tradition that is based around Wawa, and that is putting our hoagie receipts on the ceiling of the van. It's frowned upon if somebody doesn't participate. All in all, Mr. Doherty is a great guy, and he has helped me to become a better, more mature person, and has developed me into a golfer that used to break a club every time he went to the range. And yes, you heard that correctly. To now, someone that is semi-functional on the golf course. Mr. Doherty is such a great guy that he trusts me enough to use various clubs that he has let me use despite my less than ideal history with such things. Coach, I thank you for all the things that you do for me and everyone here. Congratulations on 30 years.
So the best way I can describe Mr. Doherty is a guy that straight up kind of knows how to go about life. He gets it. He knows what he's doing. He knows when it's time to get down to business, but he also knows when to have a little fun with it. Now, I can't go too in depth with this, as the rule in the golf team is what happens in the golf fan stays in the golf fan. But I can say that Mr. Doherty supplies some of the best advice I've ever received. One of the great pieces of advice I've received from Mr. Doherty is the whole clipboard advice. Anywhere you go, if you take a clipboard, you'll look like you belong. He then continued to tell the story of how he once attended a swim meet, and everyone who swims knows that it's not the easiest thing to watch a swim meet. And so he, being Mr. Doherty, went out to his car, grabbed his clipboard and pencil, and walked directly onto the pool deck, acted and played the role as if he belonged, and got to watch the whole swim meet from the pool deck. That is just him doing life the way he knows how to do it. I think one of the best pieces of advice I received from him was on the golf course, and was simply swing easy, stupid. This was something that helped me after I, at times, shallow my baseball and ended up swinging a little too hard. And it also kept me in good mind, good peace, when I didn't always play the best. Anyone who has him for class or knows him closer knows that you won't go a day without hearing, "What's up, player?" from Mr. Doherty. This is the kind of high-spirited attitude he brings everywhere he goes. Mr. Doherty is a great mentor as a coach, teacher, and as a person. He's helped me improve my game on the golf course, and more importantly, helped me play a smarter game on the golf course. In classroom, he's extended my passion for math greatly this year. He always brings a positive, loving passion to teaching and what he does. In life, he truly cares about making a positive impact on kids' lives in as many ways as possible. I'm greatly looking forward to the next few years. I want to thank Mr. Doherty for everything he's done for me throughout the years and the positive influence he's had on my life. There's no doubt I'm a better person today than I was prior to meeting Mr. Doherty, due largely to his influence on me. Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Good morning, everyone. We gather here today to honor the 30 years that Mr. Doherty has put in to inspire and teach the students at Perkiomen. That is a fact of all of us know, but none of us have truly absorbed. 30 years, wow, that's longer than I've not only been at Perk, but also alive. I've not yet personally experienced the magnitude and wisdom and encouragement that Mr. Doherty has shared, but I can share an example of one who has. 7 years ago, he inspired a student who arguably at the time had no direction, that was in his words, and decided to become a finance major. He graduated and is currently working on Wall Street in the financial industry. It is clear to me that my advisor has influenced many. Mr. Doherty is beloved by many students here at Perk, so much so that they invited him to Korea to visit and have kept in touch for years. This is often the topic of conversation among alumni. He has a wall of pictures behind his desk, which all have countless students who are nameless to us, but each have a profound connection with Mr. Doherty at some point in time. Perhaps the most beautiful sentiment of his impact is that he truly will never know how often his name is brought up in a positive light when he's not around. I would like to spend my time up here explaining the impact he had in one family, that being my own. Let me introduce a math problem before I begin. Let's argue that Mr. Doherty has about 60 students total in a year for algebra. Of course, I'm undershooting this. Multiply this number by 30, and we can easily say that he has impacted thousands of lives, and it's not an understatement. My brother Thomas first got to know Mr. Doherty when he was 15. He had received a D in geometry the year before, and Mr. Doherty told him he should consider looking at a career in the arts, since he didn't have it in him to study mathematics. When my brother tried to tell me that Mr. Doherty thought that he was a bad student, Thomas said that Mr. Doherty laughed at him. Mr. Doherty and Thomas met twice a week for an entire school year, and to say that man turned his life around would be an understatement. Peter Doherty is the reason my brother is a physics major working at CHOP. He went above and beyond, and he really doesn't have to do that for anybody. After my brother left, Mr. Doherty assured our family that he would be Travis's advisor, since he knew our family well by this point. In the first advisory meeting with my brothers, Thomas and Mr. Doherty, Travis was incredibly shy and wouldn't say a single word. Thomas and the other kids in advisory would tease him for being quiet, certain that he was planning something, when they didn't look. What they didn't know that Travis was forming a bond with Mr. Doherty when they weren't looking. My brother woke up one morning, and a few hours later, he was sitting in an emergency room, scared for his life with my mom. The doctor had just left the room, and Travis learned he had been diagnosed with cancer. Tears streamed down his face. My mother went up to Travis and asked what she could do for him. This is probably the saddest but most beautiful part. He said he felt alone and wanted my mom to call my brother Thomas and then Mr. Doherty. Mr. Doherty was one of the first people to hear about Travis's sickness. After long days at work, Mr. Doherty would come talk to Travis about his mental state, his condition, and how he was coping with it all. At one point, Mr. Doherty was the one person who could get him to eat. He would drive all his way to the hospital with fresh pizza from his personal favorite pizzeria. He would sit with him, hold his hand, make him laugh in the hospital. There can never be enough ways to thank him for that. Mr. Doherty is the kind of man who stepped up to the plate to be a father figure. He didn't have to do it, and he really didn't need to. He did it because he's the kind of person that he is. I figured I should speak from the heart about myself. Amongst all, we have been through Mr. Doherty's door, and we know that it's a safe place to talk to him. And he's gone out of his way to help me academically because of what my family's been going through. Mr. Doherty is also the most genuine person I've ever met. My brother Thomas tried to thank him for everything a few weeks back, and Mr. Doherty looked at him and told him, "Shut up." When I think of a teacher that goes above and beyond for his students, I think of him. When I think of what an adult looks like, I think of him. When I think about how he served Perkiomen for 30 years, I realize that we couldn't be any luckier to have him with us. I hope we get many more years of teaching and many more hearts touched. I love you.
Thank you to everyone who spoke today. Thank you to all the dedicated faculty and staff who serve us every day. Maya Angelou said, "People may forget what you do, but they won't forget how you make them feel." Thank you for the loyal support that you all show to the community. Tim Miller will be available up front for anyone who would like to take a photo. If the honorees, speakers, and any guests could please stay for photos. Again, thank you, faculty.